Okay,
Fine, thank you.
no
Thanks
problem.
for asking.
So you're working on December 23rd?
Yeah, sad, isn't it?
Yeah, wow, I'm so sorry.
Oh, that's fine.
But you can have an impact on people so close to Christmas, though. That's a positive thing.
There you go. There you go.
See, that's, you gotta look at the positive way. So,
I always do. I try to anyway.
Well, it's
But
good
there
to-
are days.
I can imagine so. Good to hear your voice.
Pardon?
I say it's good to hear your voice.
You.
So just for the record now, because I have you on record, I'm recording this right now.
Yeah,
So
I heard.
where do you work and in what capacity?
I work at St. Vincent Charity Medical Center, and I'm the Mission Outreach Project Coordinator.
Fantastic. For how many years?
I've been in Mission Outreach since '95.
Okay.
I've been at St. Vincent since 1980.
Wow. That's fantastic.
One place for a long time, but doing a lot of different things. So
Still, that's fantastic.
lucky. I'm very lucky.
When
Yes.
you were a kid, what'd you want to be?
I didn't know. I didn't know until I actually started working here and going to college at the same time. And then I found out what I wanted to do. And so it was good.
Fantastic. I'm so
Yeah.
happy for you.
Mhm.
Okay, so when COVID first hit
Yes.
in March of 20,
Yes.
how were your activities when you're essentially in your work activities? How were they impacted the first time?
They were greatly impacted. Everything shut down. So my work is primarily in the community. I don't do, like, I have a social work degree. That's my background, but I couldn't discharge a patient if you paid me. What I've always done is community. So out in, at the apartments or in the high rises or in the public housing, and that's where all of my work is. And so when COVID hit, everything shut down. We couldn't go out in the community.
Oh, wow.
Couldn't connect with people. At that time too, people weren't used to things like Zoom or using texting, or they were used to me being there. So we hadn't really had a lot of that set up. So it took a few minutes to put things together so that we could at least make some efforts. Yeah.
Now, how was that for them? I mean, you had people that are in the city
Right.
having to go from their daily life to suddenly stops, and the anxiety had to be huge for them.
Right. Yes. Well, I think at first in March, I think it was more not knowing what was going on. And so just trying to grasp something that was totally something that nobody could understand that was going on. So I think we here at the hospital and those in the community, it was the same thing. We were all in the same boat, sort of, walking around in the dark, not quite knowing what, where. So the one thing that I do, the biggest thing that I remember is I, at that time, was doing a youth group.
Okay.
Right next to us is a city recreation center. And so since 2017, we had been doing an after-school youth group with basically the same group of 13 to 15-year-olds. So every Tuesday and Thursday and most Saturdays, because we would go places, we were together and doing. And then we got the word, as everybody did, that everything had to cease. So right before that, we had one last meeting when the word that COVID had hit was reaching everybody. And the kids were, had so many questions. We all, the adults that were there were just letting them try to talk it through, because we really had no answers either. we didn't know. And so the kids, it was amazing, their response. I mean, for, 14, 15-year-olds, some of them were wiser than many adults I had been encountering. They were right on it, like, Miss Kathy, do you have any masks? And that was at the time when, you didn't need a mask.
Yeah.
Remember first?
Yeah.
They said no masks. So, Miss Kathy, do you have any masks? Where's the hand? Do you have hand sanitizer? They were right on that. They were right on that. So they were, I think, more cautious and more concerned than a lot of the adults that I had encountered in those couple of days. It was really interesting.
So
go ahead.
Can you share some positive stories from your people that you interacted with and some not so positive stories from that first wave?
Sure. Positive stories. Oh, that will take a minute.
Give me the not so positive first.
Especially the first wave, pardon?
Give me some not so positive first, whatever's easier for you.
Yeah, we, well, from the first wave, and you're talking about that summer?
Yeah, from March until things kind of quieted down a bit, after let's say September. Okay,
so we did a lot of things, but I think Leslie and Carrie will talk about some of those things, like the screenings and those stories. So there are a few things I'd like to hear about the youth group and the way they handled it. So we did a lot of work around trying to keep in touch. So immediately we set up like a texting group.
Okay.
And that was going hot and crazy for a while because the kids were, and that was wonderful because it meant they wanted to stay in touch with each other and with us. And we became part of whatever, we adults became part of whatever conversations they were having among themselves about any of the issues, like school shut down, what do we do? There are all these things I'm watching and seeing on the internet about, what the cause is, and the kids would share those stories, and some of them were in the beginning and some a little bit now too, a little bit outlandish. So we would have that opportunity just through texting to kind of question and help them work through some of those issues and some of the things that the adults in their lives were talking to them about. And so that opened up a wonderful avenue for us to at least help them through some of the misinformation, information that was going around.
Interesting. So you got insight into how they were feeling through their preferred mode of communication, which is texting.
Yes.
Wow.
Yes. That was, it was wonderful. Of course, they do text at 3 a.m. So
yes,
that
of course
was
they
a
do.
little challenging.
Of course they do.
So, but we got through it. We did. They understood that we're old and we're adults and we don't do that.
But the thing about it though is those thoughts come to them when nothing else is around, which is 3 o'clock in the morning,
Right. So we did have one gentleman who was pretty good at that. Good. But the others, the kids got to understand that we're better during the day. So we had a lot of that going on. The interesting, so then we were able to, because people at first weren't, and then Zoom became the way to go. Mm-hmm. And so that was new at that time to do with all the kids and us. So we set up a Zoom talk when we did it regularly, and the kids basically wanted, instead of at first we thought, well, let's set up an agenda and go through like we were doing our regular programs. But the kids just were so excited to see each other, to talk to each other, to see what was going on, even to be able to hook up with the adults and see that at least, the world, there was some stability. The people that I knew before were still there. Mm-hmm. They still looked okay to me, you know, and we were still having those conversations. So Zoom became a little bit of a lifeline for the kids. And they, you know, we were just doing it for, you know, once a week, and the kids would, hey, you know, come on, hey, Miss Kathy, can we do a Zoom? I got to talk to so-and-so. So we would just start setting it up and have those conversations. It would give the kids an opportunity just to connect.
And you saw that relief from they came across them when they actually connected. They had to see that. That had to be a big deal.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Yes.
So this is like summertime now, right? Summer of 20, you think?
Yeah. This is so everything happened in March. We didn't get hooked up with Zoom, I think, until May.
Okay.
So from May onward throughout the summer, it was Zoom meetings.
Okay.
Trying to do at first, you know, and it was a novelty. Probably the challenge became when the schools also, like in September when school started virtual, it was difficult to get the kids back to Zoom and the meetings because they were just burnt out from being on Zoom all day.
Yeah, I can imagine
later,
that.
you know, in the summer when school started. But yeah, during the summer it was yes, but once school started and they were Zoom all day, yeah, it didn't. they just, that was difficult. We were able to, because sadly that summer we had a grant to do the kids and had a couple of extensions to keep that group going, but then the grant ended, and a lot of the kids were turning 17 by that time. They'd started when they were 14, so kind of aging out and going to be seniors. So we had, thankfully, at the end of that summer in July, August, things lessened up a little bit, and we were able to have an end of program fun day. So we went to one of the water parks, fun parks, and the kids got to be together and we had a great time, and that was good. That was good.
An in-person get together.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
When it lulled for a little bit, and then it, you know, everything got a little more stringent, so we had to stop that. But at least they had that opportunity.
When did you see the first wave hitting hard? I mean, as far as physically hitting hard.
Do you mean people that were around us getting sick?
Yeah, I mean, how do they react to the the impact of having people that they knew getting it, or did they ever have people that they knew got it? Did they know of anybody that they got sick from their circle?
Yes, the kids. Well, yes, and it was a lot of the older adults in their families, the grandpas, you know, the great uncles, things like that in their families, and so it didn't really impact them because those people are old anyway, you know.
Right, understood.
But it was and that was basically the first, probably this summer. It wasn't anyone younger or, you know, younger cousins or none of that, or moms and dads. And that happened after, when it hit again in September, October, November. We had one of the first parents who died from COVID.
Oh my. And
that's when the kid, I think it hit, because truthfully, during the summer, even when there was lockdown, you know, I'd be calling them on the phone and I could hear kids playing in the background outside. So the kids were actually getting together in some way, shape, or form, you know, even if it was the kids on their block, you know, playing. So they were getting together. So, yeah.
So what's the first parent is affected by it, and as the first parent dies, how do they react to that?
The kids were, then it was almost as though it was March again when COVID first came, and there were all these questions. Now all of a sudden, all of it became reality in their heads, and they had basically the same questions and the same fears. So it you know, at first it was very scary for them, as it had been in March. They were afraid to be around people. They wanted, they were telling other people, man, go wash your hands. Don't, wear your mask. Don't come near me. And so it was a lot. There was a lot of fear, but the challenge again was that the kids were going on to the sites, the internet sites and stuff, and listening to a lot of the misinformation, and that was becoming their truth. Because, and it was their parents' truth. So that's very hard, even though we had this close-knit group and, we've been together. It was hard to go against things that their parents, the adults in the other adults, closer adults in their lives were saying.
Yeah, I can imagine that, because now you can't. It's got to be true because my mom and dad say it's true.
Right, or my uncle, or the guy that is around me all the time. So that a lot of that was being passed around in the other the ways the kids get the information, the TikTok and all of that and those are the sites that they are glued to all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was very hard to just, and we didn't try to preach, we listened and tried to get them to ask questions and maybe look on some of the other sites to get their information and judge between the two. But yeah, it was difficult.
Well, let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
What were the main concerns about your age groups that you deal with before the pandemic, and then let's do a comparison to that. I mean, what was your typical conversation about as far as what their concerns were?
Well, being where the kids are, where we're located, their biggest concern was violence. Because kids there, that's where the youth, the kids they knew, the kids they played with were getting killed. We had just had, before that, we had just had mini service among ourselves because one of the, a couple of the kids were related to a young boy that had been shot. And so we had to go through that grieving process and talk about that. So it was, the biggest was violence in the neighborhood that they were dealing with. And then when COVID hit, it was not only the violence in their neighborhood, which was there, but was kind of removed, but something that was invisible that was now also attacking them.
Wow.
That they had no, they couldn't see, they didn't, when it's the gun violence and things, they know it's people, they know sometimes the reasons, they know who, they know where and what, but with something, and that trauma is always with them, is just always with them. So you have now the additional trauma of something invisible, something you can't control, you don't know where it is, you don't know who, you don't know what, you don't know what to do because you're getting all this information and misinformation, and they're, so it just was an added cement layer on top of all the other things they were going through.
I can see that. That's a very interesting topic you just brought up, because you go from a person who's used to the trauma, who's used to avoiding the negative, and they know how to avoid the negative. And
Right.
the fear is always there. It's always in the back of your mind. It's always there. It's always present with you. And suddenly, and so you've adjusted to it. You learned how to adjust to it. You learn how to protect yourself. You learn how to live.
Right.
And suddenly here comes an invisible killer.
Right.
And you don't know how to protect yourself. And no one knows. You can't go to anybody. So the thirst for information will be huge because of that.
And that's why they were glued to those sites, and the information was pouring in, the misinformation.
That's why, because they need to know how to survive, and they've learned how to survive with gun violence.
Yes.
But they don't know how. No one knows how to survive this, so I got to find out how to survive. Wow.
Yeah.
Catherine, that's an amazing concept.
Well, it's not a concept, it's real.
I'm sorry. Okay, it's an amazing reality.
That's okay. That was the academic portion of you.
Yes, it was. Sorry. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so when they got back let's go to November, December
Mhm.
of last year. I mean, things got bad in nursing homes back then, but it wasn't so bad in schools yet, was it?
No, 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 not at all. I think at that time, that's why, with the whole vaccination process, they were saying maybe kids don't, maybe they have this natural immunity, all of that
Mhm.
is going on. Yeah. So.
How do
yeah,
they, when it came down to vaccinations, how do they react to that?
Well, it depended on it's like adults. It really depends. They were some were going to get that vaccine because they saw it as protection, some way to be protected. Others were not because, they're afraid that the challenge in communities of color is the problem with trusting medicine, period.
Okay,
There's always, I don't know if you're aware of that, but
I'm not.
the American Hospital Association did a huge survey across America about the 3 issues that prevent people from from having their health care taken care of adequately, and one of them was mistrust of the healthcare community.
Wow.
And of course, it goes back, we've all heard of Tuskegee, and it goes back to that, but it also goes to people's, and I'm trying to say this, so the biases that we have, whether we know the biases or there are biases we're not aware of, but they show up in the way we treat others. So usually people of color are a little concerned about coming to an institution because they're not sure how that person who is going to be treating them feels about them as people of color. And oftentimes they are treated differently, whether because the person has an avid bias or because they're not aware of the bias. A lot of that, and this is well documented, a lot of that can be easily seen if you look at people who have sickle cell, which is basically a disease of people of color.
Right.
But it causes tremendous pain, because their cells are not round like our normal blood cells, but they're sickle shaped, and so they create a lot of pain going through. But it's not something, you can't see a cut, you can't see a wound, you can't see anything, but this person is suffering. So they'll come into an emergency room in terrible pain, and a lot of the attitudes are they're coming in for drugs, they're coming in for pain meds, they're coming in and they're not looking at the person as someone who is in pain and needs to be treated for that pain. So that's just one aspect of that bias that goes across the board. So if you add that natural mistrust of healthcare across the board, that's across the nation, that mistrust, whether it's blatant or just some underlying unease about going in to get your healthcare needs taken care of. Add to that all of the misinformation going back and forth with COVID. Do you get the vaccine? I don't know.
I can see that.
It on an African American whose biology is a little bit different in some ways.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So
when we got through November, December, were they in school yet, or were they still Zooming at that point?
They were still Zooming.
Okay.
But they didn't start going back, I believe, until the spring, and that was, you had a hybrid. You could either take virtual classes or in-person classes.
When that happened, was there a reaction of relief? Were they excited?
Kids were excited to be, again, it depended on the child. Some of them still wanted to stay away from everybody and stay safe. Others were, wanted to be with their friends and let me out of this house and let me be with people. So, actually, the challenge was people, as it is with those who have worked in offices and all of a sudden could work from home, you kind of get used to being at home
Mm-hmm.
and, taking classes in your bedroom in your pajamas. And so that was challenging also to get kids back into the swing of going to school.
What were their concerns as you talked to them when they first went back, and then, let's say a month later, how were their concerns then? Any different?
I think I know initially when they went back, a lot of them were surprised at how few of their classmates were back into school, came back to school. I think it was very difficult for them to settle into being at school. Many of them, one thing was those who were 16 and over had all found jobs during that time.
Oh.
And they were making, be it McDonald's or the local grocery store, they were all working. And to give up the paycheck to go to school was challenging for them.
I can see that.
And a lot of times, that paycheck was good for their moms
Mm-hmm.
and the household, having that, especially since many of them were working, the restaurants or working the fast food that had shut down, so they didn't have jobs. So the kids being able to work and bring in a paycheck was important to the household.
Interesting. I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
Okay, so now they get through the spring, they're in school, and school ends,
Mm-hmm.
and summertime, we're thinking we're over this thing almost, because
Right.
everything's slowing down. How are they reacting to it? Were they kind of sigh of relief, or?
Yeah, this COVID stuff. Yeah. Yeah. By that time they were over it.
Did they have any historical sense of what was happening to them in terms of, years from now, we're gonna look at this event and we'll be part of it?
No, I don't believe so. I think that at their age, there's nothing historical in their lives.
Okay.
Yeah, they're more looking to their own personal, what's going to happen with them, where they're going to find a job, or what's going on, and where am I going to go to high school next year? That they were in high school, but a lot of the kids will jump around to different high schools depending on the sports program.
Mm-hmm.
So where am I going next year? The counselor didn't call me. I'm trying to look at colleges. So it was more the personal challenges that and COVID was sort of around. Some people wore masks, some of them didn't.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Now let's fast forward now to this fall.
Yes.
And now that it's hitting people that are younger age, how did it affected them then?
It's unfortunately by that time, the kids are used to wearing, where you have to wear masks, you wear masks. So you go to the rec centers, only take a certain number of people. They couldn't all play basketball. They can only play 3, I think, was it 3-on-1 or something? I don't know what it's called. So they look at the restrictions that are put on their lives. And the unfortunate part of that is because there weren't the centers that they could go to, the kids were in the streets, and violence, really took off. Kids getting together and creating some havoc. All of that was going on because there was no structure.
Mm-hmm.
And they had lost a lot of that structure when COVID first hit. The schools, at least, and the rec centers, places like that, provided structure. That whole year they lost all that structure. So that's been a big challenge, getting any sense of structure of
And I know you
back in their lives. Yeah.
You guys knew that. I mean, you knew the importance of those things.
Right.
And then suddenly you never would think about taking them away because you know the
Right.
importance of it. But now you just got that importance recognized by everybody because it was taken away. And now you realize now, I mean, you can tell people that if you shut this down, this will happen. It's part of discussion is if you don't get me, if you don't get funded and it gets shut down, this will happen. And
Right,
so people react to that kind of fear. But now you know what happens when this gets shut down.
right, right. And we're dealing with the consequences now of all those programs not being there for the kids, there not being a place for them to go. Right.
What are some of if you can't discuss some of the individual stories of people that you have talked to that have made it through some difficult times, or some that maybe did not make it the difficult times? Can you share some of the stories with us without using any names or anything?
I know, well, I don't know that I can do I think there are a number of people that I work with in the community who have, because they lost their jobs, the places, their businesses closed, they have had to move out of their housing and look for relatives to take them in, and that happened to one of the kids. He's now living with his grandfather. The family lost their house. Let me think. I know there's and this isn't with the kids, but I do sorry about that.
It's okay.
I work with a group of older adults in the community, a group of women that we met monthly, and we were sort of they were trained as peer educators. They were volunteers, women from the community, because it's so much more effective to hear about health information from your neighbor than it is from a health professional. You have no clue who that person is. So
Agreed.
these were lovely, lovely women. During COVID, we weren't able to meet, so they kind of and they're not on Zoom. They don't do Zoom. They don't have the computers and things. So a few of them lost touch with the other, and then as COVID lifted, they found out this one died, or that one is in a nursing home, or things like that. So they're dealing with the loss of people that were close to them and that they knew, but then all of a sudden we're kind of spirited away and they can't reach them anymore. Do you know?
Yeah,
It's a real sense of loss of that community they had.
I can see that, because you go from, it's usually if someone gets sick, it's a gradual breaking of the news. It's a gradual thing. Okay, I heard they're sick. I heard they're not doing well. And you get information every day, but slowly you get information. But in this case, you got nothing, and all of a sudden you got everything.
Right. And
wow.
Then, exactly. So that there was, I know that among that group, there was a lot of sadness. I mean, being older, you deal with your friends, eventual decline in a lot of ways. But I think because it was so sudden, they had, 6 months before, they had all been in a meeting and laughing, and then they find out that person is now in a nursing home, unable to care for themselves, and don't know anybody. So it's that's been so. I think if anything, young people find a way to adjust, but when you're older, I think that's hit so many of them. It's been difficult. I know that.
I can see that.
Yeah.
In the middle of the second wave right now, as we look at the present, how are the students reacting to this? How are they? Is there a resilience to them, or are they just like, I can't deal with this? Or
no, I don't think they're even trying to do. I think they've adjusted to, you wear masks here and there when you got to. Use hand sanitizer. They all have their little pocket hand sanitizers. They're careful around people, but they're still getting together to play basketball. They're still getting together for birthdays, things. So I think it's now just a part of life. One more thing.
Are they
so
still
they found a way to?
Are they still seeking on information from places just to find it, or are they just kind of?
They're just, yeah, no, it's not, as you were saying, a protective measure to find out a way to stay alive through this. It's more something that's floating around them. It's like any of the other diseases that happen. People are going to die from it.
So they kind of settled in now, and
Right.
there's less of a demand for information, good or bad,
Right.
than it was before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's almost as though no matter what information it is, they're just, it's not important to them. It's, they've given up on trying to believe the real information or they've just put it down and gone on with their lives.
Is that a good thing for you, do you think, or no?
I think it's a normal thing for young people of that age. I think it's more as you get older that it's something that you do worry about. But at that age, I think they need to live their, unfortunately, it's the adults that need to look out for them.
Mm-hmm.
And they need to, their brains are not wired. Their brains are wired to their immediate lives. And that's normal for them.
Is there a fear of a shutdown again of everything?
No.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Here's a question for you. How will this pandemic change your approach to your vocation going forward? I mean, you have maybe 20 years, 30 years left in this vocation?
No, I'm 67 now.
Ah, your voice sounds like you're 35.
Thank you. No, I'm 67 now, so I'm looking to retire soon,
Okay.
in the immediate future, yeah.
What would you like your artist to come away with from this whole interview? If you could speak to your artist personally, what would you like them to get from this whole conversation and what you've just experienced with your vocation?
I'm not sure. There are two things that the one is the amazing resilience of the community, of the youth. I think they're, as we talked earlier, to their eagerness doesn't quite hit it. There's got to be a stronger word, but when there was an issue, they sought for anything that could help them and protect them. And so I think that speaks to their resilience in surviving. Mm-hmm. And their desire to survive things that are thrown at them. And I think that speaks to their strength. The other is the thing that how slowly institutions move to help protect them, and how those protections aren't available, and how destructive it can be to communities.
That's a good point, because we never had to have people move fast before, mm-hmm. And they didn't know that, and now they have proof of it.
Right.
Wow. I haven't thought about that. You're correct.
I think and especially the most vulnerable communities, they have their strength and resilience, but they, it's like, I don't know if you know the clinic in UH there and the National Guard are now mm-hmm. testing, right? They're right. Doing the mass testing, but the only way to do that is to go online and register. So that leaves out a huge portion of the population.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that you're allowed to go. They had to go online to do that. Wow, you're right. It sure does.
Yeah. So who gets tested?
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think a little bit of that also rubbed off on the kids. Like they didn't have access. Their parents didn't have access. Where do I go to get tested? What do I do? At first, because it was all the county and online, and you had to register even then, until folks finally got a phone number out that you could, call and register. So that really brought up how we think of those who aren't as capable as others.
The most
to
vulnerable.
access what's needed to survive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Wow. Catherine,
Yes, sir.
tremendous conversation. This was amazing to me.
Oh, I'm, come out and work. Although I'm retiring, I would say come out and work with me. It's wonderful.
It has to be. Your insight and just getting a glimpse of what you do and the impact you've had on so many people is amazing, truly amazing.
Well, thank you, but come on out and do it too. It's great.
Years ago, when I remember this like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
Back when I was 23, I had a Christmas party that I held at my apartment, and it was a party room, so I got a tree for it. It was a week before Christmas, and I said, okay, I have an extra tree left over. I want to donate it. So I called up somebody and said, we'll call up the Garden Valley Estates on Kinsman.
Oh, yeah.
So I did. And I donated it, and I felt, people, some of my friends, because I was 23, right? Some of my friends were like, well, why would you donate that, not just food? I go, well, I don't have food to donate. I have a tree to donate. But it was important for me to drive there, because I live in a little town called Kirtland.
Yeah.
But important for me to drive there and to meet the people and to see the impact it had on them by just donating a Christmas tree.
Yes. Yes.
Because some people don't have them.
That's right.
And I had two of them. I didn't need both of them. I only needed to have one. So I got a glimpse of that neighborhood when I was 23, and I really felt like I didn't do much, but I'm glad I did it.
You gave somebody Christmas.
I know, that's right. But my friends are like going, shoot, what are you doing? Come on, you're wasting your time. I'm going, yeah, but still.
Oh, yeah.
So I never forgot that.
It's like, people, we have a clothing room here at St. Vincent's because we have a lot of the homeless population and people in the inner city who come to get their health care taken care of, and their clothes are just rags. So through the clothing room, the nurse can come down and get pants and shirts and shoes and whatever they need. And we rely on donations. And, I go through those and sort them. And I swear, going through and seeing what people they think is good enough for people who have nothing to wear.
Oh my gosh.
It's the torn up, it's the dirty, and I'm like, why would you feel good about giving this to a person who has nothing? Do you feel that if they have nothing, they should be happy with this torn up old shirt?
Seriously, yeah.
I say that to say your Christmas, people, even though they have nothing, it's good that you give them food, but they also need their spirit fed. And that Christmas tree, to give them the spirit of Christmas, to make them feel that they deserve a Christmas tree, that they have a Christmas tree for Christmas. Heck, that's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, because I never brought it up again since then. I never discussed it, but I thought about it because I know the neighborhood down there.
Yeah.
And I thought, I was a little nervous because I'm driving, and I'm not used to this neighborhood. I'm not used to being there, and people give me all kinds of horror stories. I said, I don't care. If I don't do this, I'm going to feel terrible.
Yeah.
So I had to. So.
Well, whatever that little voice was, yay voice.
Thank you. Catherine, you are a tremendous person. I'm so glad we got a chance to talk today.
Oh, thank
Truly.
you. I hope I get all the best for the young people who are going to do this.
Well, I will gladly, what I'll do is I'll give you an update as we progress through.
Okay.
I'm looking at May sometime for the big grand unveiling of the artwork.
Okay.
But I'll keep you posted, okay?
Please do. Thank you.
Catherine, bless you for what you do. Thank you for sharing some time with me today. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. I enjoyed talking to you. And I'll remember your Christmas tree story. I think that's wonderful.
We will talk again soon, okay?
All right. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.